What is good, YouTube? It's your boy Rome himself. I'm back at it again, and we got some very special content to cover today. So of course, you know, at Evo just a weekend ago, SNK was there. They had their booth set up and they brought a public build of Fatal Fury City of the Wolves for FGC folks and just fans of the series as a whole to give their shot and try out the game. However, I do want to say big shout outs to SNK for giving a content creator like myself some personal time with the game so that I can get my hand-on initial impressions, mash some buttons, test out some characters, and overall just get a great feel of how the game is. They also allowed me to record some footage for you guys, so I was able to bring back that footage, and of course that's the footage we'll be going through in this video. Not only did they hook me up with footage, but they also hooked us up with this really sweet swag bag here that comes with a few things. This nice Evo SNK lanyard that I wore all weekend, Kyoku Genryu bear foam fingers. This one isn't, obviously it's not, you know, put up. I do have to put up one somewhere, but yet they gave us an additional one. And of course, the coolest gift from the swag bag. This box houses all of the buttons from all the characters that they've shown at Evo so far. You see the power of this box? My whole background gets dark. This is like the infinity stones of the buttons, and I got them all. I even got the very exclusive, elusive Fatal Fury logo button, of course, you know. All right, I'll stop flexing, but I do have two more things to say before we get into this video. Click that subscribe button, like this video, comment as well. If you're not subscribing though, you're messing up. You need to get in there, subscribe to this channel. I try to post as frequently as I can, and you guys have been seeing it. You guys have been also very nice about it, so I'll be nicer. Subscribe. And two, if you're looking at this footage, I want you to know, please don't judge. I was the very first person, number one, the first person to try this game out early Friday morning at Evo, 11 a.m. That was my appointment with SNK. So I was the very first person to try it out, which means I didn't get any time to play in the public booths or anything like that. I just had to go off my mind. What can I try out? And it's a little tough to lab or practice in like a setting like that. You really just want to get your hands on the game. So I was just mostly mashing buttons. I recorded a lot of footage of me just trying out some combos and things, but of course the muscle memory wasn't there. So the footage you're going to see here is just matches of me playing the computer. I primarily use Vox Reaper, so you're going to see a lot of Vox in this footage. If you like the character, maybe you'll see something you know. But for the most part, it's just me mashing against the computer, just seeing what works, you know, testing out some things in theory, familiarizing myself with the mechanics, because oh boy, there's a lot of mechanics in this game. My very first impression of this game, the minute I got to sit down and play my very first match, the first thing I thought of that came to my mind was we finally have a current gen SNK fighter. Now you're probably gonna say, Rome, what do you mean? You know, KOF-15 came out on the PS5, and at the time, Samurai Showdown was current gen for PS4. And while you are right, I will say that those games, as good as they were graphically, they, to be honest, you know, for better lack of a term, they looked more like a past gen fighting game. This game here though, it is super vibrant. The color palette is so strong. Everything feels just a right pop. These characters look like they're ripped right out of a superhero comic book, and I'm sure that was the general design with the game when they were creating this. Whether it's the fluidity in the animation, the super bright color palette, the fact that the hit sparks look so nice and dynamic. I would even say similar to Killer Instinct, but in a better way, more tame. There's not so much of an eyesore, but everything like that just working in tandem with each other. In addition to like the stages, like come on, these stages are super gorgeous. And the fact that a lot of them are references to past Fatal Fury games makes things even feel much better. The sound direction is really good too. I noticed that when you get certain notifications like a counter hit or invincible or, you know, just defend, anything like that, there's a voiceover that will come in and say, you know, reversal, counter. And while that can be a little annoying at times if it's like too loud, stuff like that is very important. It's very integral to competitive fighting gaming, because a lot of us, we use sound cues. We're not always good with the visual. I myself, I need to hear a sound cue for a counter hit, for a reverse, or anything just to know that I'm able to get the next follow-up I need or proceed with the next part of the match. And I gotta say, I love the zoom in feature. I know it's like against something that it's like kind of simple-minded, but things like that, it definitely looks really cool in tense situations. So yeah, just playing this first matchup alone, already I was aghast at how beautiful this game looks. Also, I'm apologizing again in advance. This is all one rough take here, so I'm gonna try to be as coherent and as streamlined as possible, but we might jump around. So I want to talk about the button scheme. So the button scheme in this game is just like Garo Mark of the Wolves. It's A, B, C, D, your 2 punches, light and heavy, your 2 kicks, light and heavy as well. But in this game, they have an additional button, which is the E button, which is also known as your rev button. So it's technically a 5-button game with only 4 buttons being your attacks. The rev button encompasses stuff like your rev guard and your rev super, or your hidden ignition. I think that's the proper name for the super. So it has all that stuff attached to it. So this build that we had to play, there was no way to change your controllers. So the way it was A, C, E on top, and then B, D on the bottom. And then the other buttons that were there, I think there were macros for other stuff, but I didn't really dabble with those. I usually just play whatever the default button scheme is. But I do bring up macros because of the fact that there was no macros at the time. I was talking to one of the reps there for SNK because of the fact that I feel like there's a lot of buttons. There's a lot of button combinations in this game, guys, and sometimes it was kind of hard to keep track of. Of course, like I mentioned, this was the first time I got to play the game, so taking what I knew from previous Garo as far as like certain inputs for like instant overhead, feints, breaks, etc., it didn't pan out as well, and I'll bring it up now. The inputs, actually, they changed some of the inputs. So if you're a Mark of the Wolves player, you will know that the feint cancels that you would do, like the fake specials, was both punches. So A and C, and then either forward or down, right? So like if Terry wanted to do a fake burn knuckle, you would do down, and then you would do A and C together. He fakes it. In this game, the feints were tied to D and E. So heavy kick and the rev button. Still with the other inputs, you can do forward or down. Now the tricky part with that is if you just look at an arcade stick, right? How I mentioned the top was ACE and the bottom was BD. If you look at your typical arcade stick, that means you had to do circle and R1, the rev button. So my fingers were looking like kind of like split like this in order to do the feint. So it was a little awkward. Universal overhead as well is a different input now. It's now C and E instead of C and D. So it's no longer C and D, C and E, a little bit easier than the feint mechanic, but still some time to get used to. Like I said, I was confusing the two a lot. And you might see that in this match footage where like I go for something that looks like an obvious break and I don't get the break, or I go for something that looks like an overhead and I don't get the overhead or the command low, because my mind is like still on Mark of the Wolves. Of course, that'll be easy, you know, once you actually play the game. I'm sure people will be able to get that out of their system. So I'm here to say really quickly, it does help if you play Mark of the Wolves for the rest of the mechanics, which we'll talk about. But if you're a newcomer, you don't necessarily have to play Mark of the Wolves to play this game. Speaking of DP breaks, something that they did that I really like in this game is that the break mechanic for uppercuts in this game is locked to your heavy uppercut, where your light uppercut is the reversal. So if someone's jumping in on you and you just want to do a DP, you're going to do the light version. It's faster, it might not do as much damage, but you'll get the guaranteed reversal. You'll get the iframes and you'll be able to hit the opponent. When you're going for breaks, you do the heavy version. A little more startup on it, but it's easier to break now, like on whiff. I was spamming breaks on whiff when I was playing, whereas in Mark of the Wolves, it's a little tighter to do because it's just an older game and inputs are a little more strict, but it's easier to come out here. And again, your mind goes to the fact that, oh, lights are for reversals, heavy is for break. So it streamlines everything. So when I did get a chance to mess around with other characters, I knew immediately, oh yeah, their break version of the move is the heavy version. So I could just go in for that. And then you want to go for the anti-air, you use the DP. So Just Defend works just like it did in Mark of the Wolves. I do hear some players that were here that got to try it out that are prominent at Mark of the Wolves. Players like Scrubx, the Evo champion, actually. I think he mentioned that he feels like the window to Just Defend is it's easier now. I could see that. Again, I'm not someone who is like, I wasn't a pro at Mark of the Wolves, and while I do understand Just Defending and guard canceling, it's not something I always went for, right, or did. Just Defending I would do, obviously, but guard canceling is a whole nother beast in itself. And I will say that guard canceling in this game still feels as tight as it was. The good thing is that the buffer that was in Mark of the Wolves is still in this game. So for instance, if you are if you want to just defend and then immediately do a super or like let's say a DP, the best thing you could do is you buffer the DP or the move, and then the minute the normal or fireball hits you, that's gonna, you know, that you want to just defend, you just defend it, and then you just press the button and you'll get the super. It's definitely a skill you'll have to learn if you're going to be playing this game. If you're new to any Fatal Fury, Mark of the Wolves, or City of the Wolves, it's a skill that you will definitely need to know in this game, because it is so pivotal to just integral, I should say, to like the highest of high levels and how to really punish things in this game. I didn't see much from people going for hyper defense. That's the red parry, if you will, where you just press forward in the block string, a multi-hitting block string. I dabbled with it, tried to see what I could do, but I'm sure it's going to be very similar to that, where you're going to have to red parry or immediately hyper defense and then go into super. So you're going to have fast hands for that one. That seems a bit more sweaty. Something we'll tackle when the official game comes out. So the Rev Guard, that's the move you do when you hold down the button, right? And it builds that shield and it does the pushback. So I gotta say, you know, looking at the mechanics on paper, I didn't think much of the Rev Guard. I thought perhaps it was a mechanic that we may not need. I'm like, why would I want to expend my my overheat meter, my Rev meter? Why would I want to use this on a push block when I can just defend? But I'm glad to say I was wrong. There's actually some merits to that. Some strings are very tight in this game to try and punish. That Rev Guard, it pushes them out immediately. I'm talking like if your opponent does like one normal in the string, the Rev Guard pushes them out. But we did find out something cool. Shout outs to Juicebox and my boy Olaf. We were talking, well, I was talking with Olaf about it, and he was telling me him and Juicebox got to test some things out. And it looks like with the Rev Guard, you can use it as kind of a just defend. And what I mean is, if you tap the button, think of it as like a perfect shield, right? If you tap the Rev button instead of holding it down right at the impact of an attack, it'll use less Rev meter and it'll still retain the pushback. And I'm talking something like you might be able to do that 2 or 3 times before your Rev meter actually gets used. I wish I had footage of that, but like I said at the time, that was something we talked about later on throughout the weekend, and I didn't get a chance to record that. But I would love, the next person who's able to play this game at any event, if they can record that so I can see, because yeah, that sounds insane. So there is some use to that, just like there is use to the Rev Blows. The Rev Blows is the CD attack, that's where you glow green. My concerns with the Rev Blow is the fact that it has armor, if there was any direct counters to it, or can you punish it. And the good thing is that there is quite a bit of startup, right? So if your opponent is mashing Rev Blow on Wake Up, it's kind of a lot of startups, so you can throw them out. You can actually hit 1 or 2 normals, and then right before it connects, you can, if you're close enough, you can grab them and throw them, which I think that's good. That's a great answer to that, right? So you don't have to deal with how strong it is. On block, some of them can be punished from various situations. I do get a punish, I think, in this video on, I want to say, Marco's air Rev Blow, as well as throughout the week when I was playing, I got some decent punishes on like rocks and stuff like that. So a lot of it is going to vary on the character. Everyone, Rev Blow, even though it functions the same, it has guard point and it's used to blow up attacks. Everyone has different, right? Preachers is good for fireballs. Rocks is good for anti-throw tech, right? Because he hops in the air. So there's great usages for them. Mileage may vary, but the fact that they're punishable, you just have to be exact on your punish, which makes me feel good. Because looking from the footage, it looked like they were kind of safe. And again, the game is still being made. Nothing is done, nothing's concrete. I'll probably say this a few more times in the video, but when I was talking with the SNK representatives, they were telling me like, hey, this is an older build. Nothing is final here. There's some stuff that was in a previous build that they changed. There's stuff in this build that are probably changed, later on in the other builds that they have that we haven't seen yet. And again, real quick, if you haven't noticed, the build that we had at EVO, this was the same build they brought to Summer Games Fest. So this was the build that had Marco, Terry, Rock, Preacher, and Vox Reaper. Speaking of those characters, we should just jump into them right now. Terry Bogard, my oh my, this character is absolutely brain dead. I mean, it's super early to talk about tiers and who's really good. We don't know. We're just mashing. But I will say he feels very good to mash with. All of his buttons have like high priority. I'm talking stand C beats a lot of things. Like even if you mistime your meaty by a slight second, I feel like you'll die to it. He has what I figured out right now, some of the easiest feint combos too. I saw everyone doing that, which is the target combo. It's heavy punch and then forward heavy punch. You can do his forward feint into crouch heavy punch into pretty much whatever special move you want with him, because everything seems to work with that guy. Speaking of the special moves, I also forgot to mention when it comes to mechanics, but the Rev Excel, that's the mechanic that you can use to chain EX moves into each other. Just want to say real quick, that shit is dope. It is so seamless. There's like no execution barrier behind it. Everything just, it fluctuates so smoothly, and you'll see that with Terry Bogard. Like I mentioned, Terry is crazy. All of his stuff seems to work. He gets like multiple ground bounces in like one combo. It's crazy. I feel like I've seen a combo where all of his special moves work into one, and he just hits hard. I'm sure you guys saw the exhibition. That dude hits hard. He's real easy to play. So the character I played the most this weekend was Vox Reaper, and I actually really like Vox Reaper. I wasn't initially gonna play them. I was coming into this to just use Terry. But then I thought, hey, you know how to play Terry. I might as well try out a newer character. And I didn't want to play Preacher because I felt like she was kind of complicated, and I'll talk about that once we get to her. But I said, you know what, Vox, the footage I've seen of Vox, I'm not sold on him. He doesn't look too cool with his little half mask and his face and his bald head. But I said, you know, let me try this character out. I didn't play Grant in Mark of the Wolves, so I'm not jaded. You know, I know some Grant fans just want to have Grant back. So that helped me out. Anyways, we ended up playing Vox all weekend, and I'll tell you right now, if this game came out tomorrow, I would be locking in on Vox. He would be my main. I had a ton of fun playing this character. His special moves, all of them are super unique, and they work in like just really well, right? They integrate everything when it comes to his combos. He's got some cool mix-ups. So one of the things I was doing towards day 3, you won't see it in his footage here, but towards day 3, he has a dash attack, the same one that Grant does, but for Vox in this game, because you have multiple breakaway moves, his dash can be broken, and when it's broken, he does the animation of it, but he doesn't do the hit. So I started mixing in some strings where like I would do like 2 normals into like feint dash, and then I would command grab them or regular throw. Then after that, I would do it again. If I did it to an opponent where I grabbed them, I would sneak in the raw overhead. So if they go for a throw attempt, they get hit by the raw overhead. It does the slow animation zoom, which means I have more time to get a bigger counter hit. Sometimes I would just do the fake dash for, you know, and then like press a button, right? Plus his close D. His stand C is like really fast. You can link it off close B or stand D. It's nuts. Sometimes I would just let the dash rip, because if they're expecting me to do a feint dash, if I got them accustomed to that, they would get hit by that. So just stuff like that with his mixes. His dive kick, only thing I will say, his dive kick is good. You can't do it jumping back though. You can only do EX dive kick jumping back. And also EX dive kick doesn't have a height restriction. In fact, I noticed a lot of EX moves in the air, they don't have height restrictions. So if you have a backdash that puts you airborne, you might be able to do it close to the ground. Of course, I think in this build, Vox Reaper was the only one that had like a move. No, Rock has the air fireballs. You can do them low to the ground too. But for the most part, yeah, I'm thinking of characters like Bijane when she comes in. How low to the ground is she going to be able to do B Harrier? You know, will it be like KOF 15 where you could backdash B Harrier? Please no. I don't want to give you guys any ideas. SNK, please. I don't want to deal with that. But anyways, yeah. So I do hope that, you know, when the game is fully out, if they could move his dive kick, because that's originally what I was talking about, if they could move his dive kick to a down back input. So the air moves in this game, you have to be precise with the input. So what I mean is, if I jump with Vox and someone throws out a button and I just defend, if I want to guard cancel, I have to press straight down. I can't do down back or down forward. Down back and down forward does not initiate the dive kick. It's only down and heavy kick. So that's the only way you can do it. So if you just defend, you have to press back and then immediately down. You know, there's no other way. Part of me hopes that they can make that where you can get dive kick, but I also understand not wanting to have dive kick on every input for down, because it, like, you know, you might not want to go for it and you get it. But if they do down back, I think people can get it in their minds that it's just down back or down. Anyways, that's just a personal gripe, something, because I was flubbing it over the weekend. But anyways, yeah, Vox is dope. Everything seems to work with him too. A lot of his juggles, his moves are great, good utility on all of them, and definitely a character I think that when you play him, he feels better than what he looks like. He's Marco. He plays just like he did in Mark of the Wolves. The only good thing here is that his combos work. You don't have to worry about any weird player 2 shenanigans or DP not knocking the opponent down from certain ranges. Speaking of, his Fireball DP game, possibly the best out of these characters right now. His Fireball has such fast recovery. I was fighting people who played Marco, and I was trying to jump just from like right here. They would throw Fireball, I would jump, and they still had time to light punch DP. So he's a character you're gonna really have to learn how to just defend and deal with his stuff. And also very similar to Terry, it feels like all his moves go into each other, man. The up kicks, the DP, the straight kicks, everything seems to juggle with him very easily. His damage is good. I'd even argue that he is possibly easier than Terry, but I just think Terry is like so busted in his build. Preacher. I didn't touch Preacher at all, but I was watching some people play. There was a player actually on the sweaty rotation. The sweaty rotation was the line to win those arcade buttons that SNK was giving out. You had to win 2 games and then they would give you a button, but that turned into the sweaty line. All the good players went there. J-Dash, Dente, Frieza. I was online a few times. Violent Kane was online. So anyways, all the good players went there, and there was a Preacher who was there who I could tell the gears started turning with them. And even though she's Joe's apprentice, she's gonna play completely different to Joe. Obviously, some of her moves, you can see the animations of them are different than Joe's, like the way she kicks out her Fireball. But I'm talking, she gets some real good pressure, and I've seen a few times where that guy would knock somebody down, do meaty tornado with them, so they have to guess on wake up, right? Get hit by that meaty tornado and then deal with like her incoming golden heal, which is like plus on block. Also, to mention, I talk about universal mechanics. Her universal overhead, which everyone has, is not created equal. Hers is actually, I would say, the best of this build we have right now, for the simple fact that she's the only character in this build that can link off of her raw overhead. If she does raw overhead, she can get a 2A or a crouch light punch without counter hit. Everyone else can only combo off overhead if it's like a wild punish or a counter hit. That's the only way. So her having access to that makes her like really good already. Not to mention the way this game is going to be played with the rev meter. Rev meter is like your everything, right? Your EX moves, your supers, your EX moves, your rev excels, etc., etc. She is going to be doing a lot of damage to your rev meter because her pressure, like I said, is so good. So if your just defense and hyper defense is not on point, I could see her depleting your meter faster than you using your resources. And last, Rock Howard. Even though as popular as he is, I haven't seen many good rocks throughout the weekend, or people figure stuff out with him faster than others. He's got a lot going on with the different versions of the Rage Run, because he now has like 4 different variations of Rage Run. So I do notice that his combos, they changed them up enough that he doesn't feel like KOF 15 Rock, which I think is potent. You know, it's a different game. You want him to play differently. But he's got access to that air fireball. And like I said, the EX air fireball, you can throw it out at any height on the screen. That is going to be a great lockdown tool. It is easily probably the best fireball right now. I would say meter spent fireball. I know I said Marco's is good, but in terms of like the meter spending, again, it's a great lockdown tool. It's 2 big fireballs. So Raging Storm, both versions are invincible, so that's good. Not every level 1 in this game is invincible. It is a Fatal Fury game, so while they may not be 0 frame anymore, which is a good thing, some of them are invincible, and his hits from the back too, so jumping in on him is not going to be as easy as you would think it would. One thing I did notice for Rock too, and it's something that again expands to the overall mechanics of the game, is that I noticed Rock's his light normals, crouching light normals, you have to hit them you have to, the timing of the hit, I should say, has to be done at a certain pace. If you do light kick, crouch light kick to crouch and light punch to elbow, you have to do it immediately. If you even leave a tiny gap and activate the elbow like a later frame of the crouch A, it's gonna drop. Hit stun doesn't seem like it's as big, right? If you played KOF 15 or KOF in general, you know in KOF 15, you can get like 3 light normals, right? You can do run up, 3 crouch and light normals to special move. Some characters could even get 4 light normals to special move, depending on the spacing and the hurt box of their opponent. In this game, no character can get 3 light normals. You're only allowed 2 normals before it pushes you out, which means that your strings are gonna have to be tight on certain things, right? You can't get too lackadaisical. You're gonna have to do the 2 buttons, but also you can link them, right? So I noticed a bread and butter for most of the characters in this build is that they can do a light normal, one of their light normals, into a heavy normal. In Vox's case, like I mentioned, Vox can do standing light kick to standing heavy punch. In Rock's case, Rock can do standing light punch to crouch heavy punch, and that links, and then you can go into whatever you want. But with that being said, yeah, you can't be brainless on your pressure. So 3 normals, don't cut it. Only 2. Take that with however you feel. I'm not against it. I would like more normals, but I'm also not against not having that. And that's one of those things that, you know, you'll just have to learn to acclimate with when the game comes out. With my initial impressions and thoughts on the characters out of the way, how does Rome himself feel about Fatal Fury City of the Wolves? Well, eager viewer, I'm glad you asked. Jokes aside, I do have some pros and cons that I do want to share with you guys, but let's go over them quickly. Starting with the pros, I do want to say that this game's combo system feels really freeform. If you can think of the combo, it will work most of the time. Not in every case. There's clearly some EX moves that are designed to be your combo enders. There's some that are designed to be your combo beginners, right? Stuff that you start off with to launch your opponent. But in the case of what I mean by that is like, there was times where, you know, you're mashing buttons and you're just thinking, okay, if I do this launcher, can I do this move after it? Or if I start with this move, will this one work? And everyone seems to have combos like that. When the game is out, players are going to be optimized. That's just how it is, right? You're going to figure out the most optimal routes, especially in a game like this when so much of your resources is tied to the rev blow, the rev meter system, that you're gonna have to be able to be more focused on that when it comes to meter management and which combos you can do from certain normals and angles and stuff. But you know, players like to talk about player expression or you know, character expression and what combos they can do and how it makes games a lot more fun when they can be freeform. And I can say, at least from an entry level, this game feels very freeform. That ties me into my next pro, which is that the game feels very easy to play for a beginner. SNK games always have a reputation of being these like gatekeepy hard games for newcomers to play. But I will say, while KOF 15 is a little more strict, right? You have to learn 3 characters. You have to learn the flow of combat. This game feels really, really easy to just pick up and play. I'm sure I can get my dad, who is not a professional fighting game player, who's not even an average fighting game player, and I'm gonna get him this game just to see his impressions. I'll probably even record it to show you guys, but I'm sure someone like him will have fun with it because it's just so cool. Like, it's so vibrant and everything feels smooth. There's no like really long combos unless you get into like the nitty-gritty of meter usage. But if you're just someone who is just looking to mash buttons for a few hours with some friends, you know, you have no idea what the FGC is, you have no idea what tournament play is, and you just see this character Terry Bogard that you remember from your childhood, or you see Rock Howard, or this cool guy that's bald with a half mask, I think for sure it'll just be fun to turn on and just mash some buttons. And I touched on this already, but meter management is so key. If we talked about this game being easy for beginners, I'm gonna say on the competitive side, the high level side, and this might be a hot take already, the game is not out. I can't stress that enough. The game is not out yet, and no one has access to it. There's no high level play for all we know. But I will say, looking at the abundance of mechanics in this game, I think at the absolute high level of this game, this is going to be one of the most stressful, one of the toughest, one of the gut-wrenching fighting games of all time. I think this is going to be harder than KOF 15 at high level. There's so many mechanics, so much, like I said, that I got overloaded trying the game out for the first time. But there's so much mechanics here. The way the meter works, where you have to monitor yours and your opponent, meter management is going to be so efficient. I'll give you an example. By day 3, when I started figuring out certain combos of Vox Reaper, pretty much the combos that Score did in the exhibition, I would do that combo, start the round off, do one of those long EX combos. If I got another jump in and did that EX combo again, while my opponent would have about maybe 35% health after that, my rev meter is pushing overheat. It's at 95%, meaning I can't do any more EX moves. I have to just defend and recover, or I have to stay on the offense. If my opponent puts me in like one block string, or I get hit by a stray normal, I'm gonna lose my meter, and just like that, I'm out of resources. I don't have it. While my opponent may have less damage than me, they're still gonna have access to a great deal of their EX moves and other stuff like that. So meter management at the absolute highest level will be very important. And we're gonna see quickly, you know, what's gonna separate the high level players from the intermediate to the low level when this game is out, you know, for a few months in, and just see how the best players are able to manage using not only the rev system, but again, just defend, the hyper defense, the guard cancels. Guard cancels are gonna make moves that are hard to punish easy for you to punish, because you're gonna guard cancel. If you got the execution, you're gonna go into super, you're gonna punish people. So it's gonna really make players second guess and think about their options. Like I mentioned before, you can't be too liberal with your movement. You can't be too liberal with your moves. Everything has to count when it comes to playing this game at a higher level. So I'm just super excited. I'm ready to get into that when this game officially drops, just to see the landscape and, you know, the players from which games, or who's going to be the ones to pick up and really take to this like a duck takes to water. Like I mentioned before, unfortunately, there is some cons to the game, just very few I want to bring up here, starting first with the light confirms. So I did touch on this when we were talking about Rock Howard and some of the other characters, but yeah, the light confirms on the ground, there's not much hit stun, and you have to be exact with your punishes. I saw Rock players in neutral just dropping elbow, right? 2A, 2B, 2A, going into elbow, doing it a second too late. When I was playing Vox as well, after a while I started to get the timing of it, but doing 2B into 2A into the dash or a fireball, even that would drop in combos. And if you're playing people who mash, they're gonna mash buttons regardless, so you're gonna lose to them. You know, you're gonna lose to them mashing. But yeah, the light confirms, I think they could use some help, and that's across the board. I know Justin Wong brought that up in one of his past videos where he felt that with Marco's light confirms weren't the best, but after trying out all the characters, I think it's an overall thing. Now, if you've played Mark of the Wolves light confirms was also similar, where that's not where the bulk of your damage came from. Most of your damage comes from just defending and blowing up people with supers and, you know, break combos and stuff. But the light confirms, like I mentioned, could use a little work, maybe some more hit stun, or maybe rapid fire them so you can get 3 of them in a string. So I talked about overheating, and one of the cons that I have so far right now, at least in this build, is that the overheat, when you're overheated and your meter's recovering, the recovery time is very slow. I can see right now there's going to be games, if it stays the same, there's going to be games where you get overheated in one round and you just never recover your meter. On the opposite of a game like Street Fighter 6, who uses the similar, you know, the drive meter system, but the drive meter recovers quite fast, right? Or I would say adequate. It covers an adequate pacing. Right now, I think this is slower, and it wouldn't be much of a problem. However, in this build, you cannot just defend when you are overheated. Now, I know that's something that could change. SNK did mention that they played with that before, because one of the earlier builds, you could just defend while being overheated, which would recover your meter faster. So I think if you're allowed to just defend while in overheat, then I'm okay with the slower pacing of the time. Outside of that, it's gonna be even tougher for people who you know, are more frugal with their meter and don't mind their meter management. And maybe that could be the case, right, for the game punishing you for not being aware of your rev meter and being able to watch it, right, and make sure that you don't go into overheat, or perhaps push your opponent into overheat. Last but not least, many special moves feel too safe. I'm talking not just like an EX version or a light. I'm talking heavy versions. Now, there is some special moves that are glaringly punishable. If I do a heavy burn knuckle with Terry and I'm not far out, if I'm close enough, my opponent can mash, get a heavy punch punish. However, there's some moves in here you can only punish with light normals and they have to be point blank. And that's something where I'm wondering again, are you gonna have us depend on doing just defends? You know, for me to get punishes on a basic level, whether it's a mistimed special move or my opponent doing a fireball string that's not true, am I gonna have to depend on the just defend, of course. Like, am I gonna have to depend on those mechanics? And while that's easier said than done, the average player is gonna take them some time to get used to using all these mechanics. Now, that's the good thing. You want the players to use the mechanics that obviously here, there's so much of them, defensive and offensive. But I think what happens, again, when you don't have SPG, when you are in overheat, and if you can't just defend, you know, how are you to fight back? You know, you don't want to feel completely helpless while being overheat. And I guess all the cons I have to this game is just thinking, what happens if I'm overheated? You know, I don't want to be completely useless. What can I do? How can I punish certain special moves? How can I stay alive and not eat this chip damage? So that's just one of the small complaints I had, I noticed. And it could just be that we don't have the game, so we haven't labbed the proper punishes. Maybe the punishes are a lot easier, but in the heat of the moment, no one's really had time to practice. So we'll figure that out as we get there. To wrap everything up and finalize my thoughts, I can say that from the time I got to play this game, whether it was in the booth, whether it was with the public, playing with all the people throughout the weekend at EVO, I can truly say that I'm very happy with this game. I'm super optimistic for this game's future. I saw a lot of people that I did not recognize, and some people I did recognize that don't play SNK games, smiling from ear to ear, looping back in the line, getting back to try either get a button or maybe play for an extended period of time, having a good time and saying that this is it. This is finally the SNK game for me. Again, not that KOF or Samsho or any other SNK title was bad, but for them, they felt very comfortable playing this game. And I know SNK has to be happy hearing that. And of course, that makes me happy to hear, because me and my boys too, a lot of KOF heads were, again, having an addictive time playing all weekend. Some of them even got all the buttons. They kept winning, going back online and just getting all the buttons over and over again. Thank you guys for watching, and I apologize in advance if I come off very rambly in this video. It's very hard to get my thoughts across when I'm not live streaming or don't have a script. So for me to just throw everything at you right now, I just hope that you can pick it apart and maybe understand what I'm saying, and hope you learned something too. And I hope this also gets you hyped for the game, for the future release of City of the Wolves. With that being said, appreciate you again for watching. I'm Rome himself. You've been great, and I'll see you next time.
That's all for now, fighters. But if you've enjoyed what you've seen, be sure to like, comment, and subscribe. Also, don't forget to follow Rome's social media pages down below. Take care, see you next time, and most importantly, thank you for watching.